It's time once again for the Kaufman Corner podcast with you as always, the good doctor, one of the co-founders of Baseball Prospectus, Dr. Rany Jazayerli. My name is Soren Petro from Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. The season is over. We've reached the finals. Final game. It has been played, and we put to rest the 2025 season. So was it a success? We'll discuss that. Then we're handing out letter grades, the rotation, the bullpen, the lineup, the coaching staff, the front office. What grades are we handing out for them? Well, you're going to find out right now here on the Kaufman Corner podcast.
You're listening to the Kaufman Corner podcast, the most in-depth analysis of the Kansas City Royals, breaking down the Royals like no one else can. Kaufman Corner is hosted by Rany Jazayerli and Soren Petro. Rany is a co-founder of Baseball Prospectus, author of Rany on the Royals, and a former columnist for Grantland, The Ringer, and The Athletic. Soren is the award-winning afternoon drive host of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. Kaufman Corner is proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, Kansas City's nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear in Kansas City since 1994. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, one contractor, all things parking lot. And now, here are your hosts, Rany Jazayerli and Soren Petro.
Thank you very much, Curtis. We do appreciate it as we are off and running. And the Royals got to 82-80, Rany. A winning record. Not necessarily the record that we predicted. We're going to go over all our predictions next week as to what we did. We were all a little bit more bullish than this. Both of us were. But it's a winning record. Does that make it a successful season in your mind? If not, why? If so, why else?
I think it does. The Royals, being a Royals fan for going on, 45 years now, and certainly the last 30 of them, if you can't appreciate a winning season for what it is, forget about the postseason for a moment, just a winning record, then you really need to stop and smell the roses, because this is the 6th winning record in the last 31 years. If that doesn't constitute a success, then maybe our standards for success are too high. It's a qualified success. It can be both a successful season and a disappointing season. And I think that basically sums up what 2025 was. But they finished with a winning record. They finished with a positive run differential. They finished with Carter Jensen, the youngest player on the team, in the final game of the year, a catcher, hitting the longest home run any Royal has ever hit in the StatCast era, 482 feet. So they had a good season on the field. They have hope for the future. They lost 106 games 2 years ago. Let's not forget. So, yeah, I'm going to say that this was a successful year.
Yeah, it was a success. I agree. And, for me, my criteria is to play meaningful baseball into and maybe most of September. They did. They weren't eliminated till the final week, weren't officially eliminated till the final week of the season. They did finish with the winning record. I think it was disappointing in that 2017 season when they fell down to 80 and 82. And I think, and I've said this before, I think we're going to look back on it, and this will mean more 2 or 3 years from now, particularly if they have a couple more winning seasons. If it's if you're like, well, this is the 4th consecutive winning season, the 5th consecutive winning season. The fact that they got that, it's not a sub 500, it's not a 500 or better. It's a winning season. They now have back-to-back winning seasons. And they did that in 13, 14, and 15, but otherwise they haven't done it previous to that until you get back to guys like George Brett being on the team, which is saying something, right? So absolutely a successful season. And I think it should be appreciated by people. Do you think it's viewed as a successful season?
I think so. I think the Royals fan base, look, we say this a lot. One of the great selling points if you are a free agent for the Royals to sell a free agent on coming to Kansas City. It's not that the fans don't care, but that the fans, they appreciate quality baseball. It doesn't necessarily have to be postseason 95 win baseball. This is not New York. You're not going to be run out of town on a rail for going 82-80. And I think there is an appreciation from the fan base of where this organization was 2 years ago. And the fact that they were relevant, like you said, that they were talked about on, MLB Network or whatever, ESPN, when they talk, the rare times they talk about baseball, they were not consigned to opening day drama and then never heard from again. Like they were a relevant team, like you said, well into September, into Chiefs season, which, is how we mark things around here. They didn't embarrass themselves. They were, it sounds like a horribly low bar, but we've had some horribly low teams in the last 30 years around here. So I think the fan base appreciates it. The attendance was, up a tick. It wasn't like a raging success, but in part that's because, June, right when kids got out of school, and that's when you're really hoping to build some buzz. And instead that was, they fell flat on their face and went 8-18 in June and really killed the buzz early. But, this is this is not a year where the attendance was 1.1 million or something like that. I think what did they draw? Like 1.75, somewhere in that range. I think the fans, responded to the fact that this is not a bad, it's a good team. It's not a great team. It's not a playoff team, but it's something still to be proud of.
And I think it also backs up, we've talked about this before as well, but I think it bears repeating that it backs up what they did last year. It makes last year not a fluke. It makes this a group of competent baseball people running the organization. It means ownership knows what it's doing, how to put together a front office and then get out of the way and let them do their thing. I think all those things they are, I don't think we need to go to spring training wondering, is this going to be 100 loss a year? A 5-game losing streak doesn't mean that the season's gone down the toilet. All of this, it's clear. Bobby Wood Jr. validated it wasn't a fluky season. Vinny Pasquantino, Michael Garcia improved. They found more pitching in other places. They found it within the system, which is something that we've been waiting for them to do. It was great that they got Michael Wacha and Seth Lugo via the free agency, and then they traded for Cole Reagans, but you wanted to see more. You wanted to believe that they could bring guys through their system. Noah Cameron gave them that. You mentioned Carter Jensen, getting a young player up there, all the things. And even though Jack Caglione really wasn't a success at the big league level, he certainly was in the minor league level and brims with promise, bubbles with promise of things to come with him. So, yeah, I mean, is there work to be done? Sure. Or am I giving out an A in every category? No. But am I excited to be a Royals fan right now? I am. I definitely am.
Yeah, there are two points I want to make. One is, we've talked about this before. Speaking as the outsider from Kansas City, even though obviously been a lifelong Royals fan, Kansas City, the people of Kansas City, the fans of Kansas City, I think care very deeply about how the rest of the country perceives them. Right. And I've said this before, and I know a lot of native Kansas Cityans have said this, like there may not be another city in America where people wear, on their shirts, literally wear the name of Kansas City. Unironically, they walk around with that on like their heart on their sleeve. Like the pride that the Kansas Cityans have towards their city, I think is very immense. And so there is this, this concern with how the city is perceived by outsiders. So one of the things that can make Royals fans not just sort of proud of the team, but proud of themselves is the fact that they are starting to have success convincing quality free agents to come to Kansas City and stay in Kansas City. Obviously, Bobby Witt, the extension he signed for an organization that just completely fumbled the bag with the likes of Carlos Beltran a generation ago, right? The fact that they got Bobby Witt, that was an enormous relief for all Kansas City Royals fans. But even this year, in the middle of the season, Seth Lugo, who looked to be maybe the most coveted starting pitcher on the free agent market, or on the trade market, I should say, but probably both, took himself off the market by re-signing with the team, right? So, and I think that when you talk about how Royals fans perceive the organization and perceive themselves, I think there's a lot of pride in the fact that Kansas City is now kind of a destination for talent. It's not the Chiefs yet, right? But at the same time, you don't automatically assume now, anytime the Royals have a good player, a player other teams might want, that he will be walking out the door the minute his service time hits 6 years. All right. So I think that in and of itself constitutes a form of success, that when the Royals have a good player now, we actually talk about how do they keep this guy around. Yes, there's going to be issues with fitting payroll, et cetera, but it's simply a matter of making the math work. It's not a matter of nobody wants to play for this organization because the organization isn't quality. The Kansas City Royals are a respected organization in baseball. Even if they didn't make the playoffs, nobody looks at them the way they look at the White Sox, the Rockies, the Pirates. We could go on and on. There are a lot of organizations that just have, a stench about them. The Royals used to have that stench. They don't have that stench anymore.
So they went, gave the sniff, and it's okay.
It's okay. They're keeping the shirt on. Yeah. They're putting it back on tomorrow. Yeah, they're re-wearing it.
Shirt smells fine. They're okay. I like it. I like that's a great way to describe how it is. All right, we're going to grade each part of the roster. We'll do that here. Go through each one of the different things, rotation, bullpen, coaching staff, what have you. We'll start that right after you hear from our friends at Gann Asphalt and Concrete. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, proudly serving the greater Kansas City area. Nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor. Locally owned and making parking lot problems disappear in Kansas City since 1994. Let Gann educate you about the most cost-effective way to solve your parking lot problems. With free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty, Gann Asphalt keeps your parking lot safer and helps you and your business avoid unnecessary delays and costly expenses. Find Gann online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor, all things parking lot. Italian Delight was the first restaurant to bring true New York-style pizza to Kansas City almost 50 years ago. They sell whole pies or pizza by the slice, or enjoy their classic strombolis, calzones, and sausage rolls. Sandwich lovers, check out their lineup of hot and cold subs, the combo, the meatball, or the Philly cheesesteak, just to name a few. And don't forget the pasta. Their famous lasagna and classic chicken Alfredo always hit the spot. And if you're hungry for lunch, check out their daily lunch specials, starting at under $10. Italian Delight can even cater your next work function or party. Dine in, carry out, or delivery, it's Italian Delight. Located just 3 minutes east of Kansas Speedway at 8145 State Ave in KCK. Check out the menu and order online at ItalianDelightKS.com. Kansas City's own Italian Delight. Northland Injury Law, Kansas City's Google 5-star rated personal injury lawyers, serving KC for more than 40 years, voted Kansas City's #1 accident lawyers, helping people with serious injuries from car accidents, work accidents, falls, and other personal injuries. Northland Injury Law doesn't get paid unless they get money for their client. Don't wait, get compensated now. If you have a case, text HURT to 22222. That's HURT to 22222, or call 816-400-HURT. That's 816-400-4878. The choice of a lawyer is an important one and should not be based solely upon advertisements. All right, let's get into it. Let's start with the rotation, Randy. Let's get some letter grades here. What are you feeling for the rotation?
So I give the rotation a solid A- for this season. The ranking in terms of ERA they were a tick worse than last year, but of course last year, relative to expectations, last year you might have been the highest grade you would give any Royals rotation in the history of the franchise. What they did last year. So they were down a tick. And when you consider the injuries they had to navigate through, I might be harsh with the minus. Like when you talk about how many starts they ended up getting from their 6th, 7th, and 8th options, and their 6th, 7th, and 8th options were Noah Cameron, Ryan Bergert, and Stephen Kolick. Like they were awesome, right? So when you consider what they had to suffer through, specifically in the rotation in terms of injuries, because the injuries that this team suffered through this season were very, very concentrated. on the not just the pitching staff, but the starting rotation specifically. And most teams, that's the biggest vulnerability you have. Right? You're down 3 starters, you're effed. The Royals were down 3 starters for most of the year. It was the 3 they were down were constantly changing, but it was Lugo. It was their best. Lugo and Reagans, the 2 guys who were ranking in the Cy Young vote last year, were 2 guys that they missed. They were both in the rotation for like 6 weeks this season. And then Chris Bubich, their big breakout guy, was out for the last 2 months of the season almost. So they did a hell of a job. For the second year in a row, every single night, the Royals had a starting pitcher on the mound who you felt confident would at least keep them in the game. It's extremely rare for the Royals to have to start somebody that you were just like, I don't think this guy is going to keep them in. There were the 2 starts from Rich Hill. Right? I mean, you could literally go through it. Let's say 2 starts from Rich Hill. I guess the 2 starts you gave to Bailey Falter, although there was hope for him, but he was probably not healthy. So, do you count those, or do you put that with like the 4 or 5 starts Seth Lugo made when he was probably hurt, etc.? You just happened to start a guy who was hurt, and then you had 4 bullpen starts, or 5 actually, 2 started by Daniel Lynch, 2 by Angel Serpa, 1 by Jonathan Bolin. That's about it. Those are the only games you could look at this year and be like, yeah, the starting pitcher, the Royals were behind the 8 ball before the game started. The other 153 games, they had a quality starting pitcher. Most teams, virtually all teams, couldn't say that.
Yeah, I went A because
I think you might be right
because of the attrition. I mean, if we're wanting to say like, okay, was this an A? So this pitching staff, this rotation was as good as any rotation out there. No, I mean, I hear what you're saying if you're knocking that side of the equation, but I thought they brought back the guys that they needed to bring back. They traded pitching in the offseason. I don't know that it helped, but I don't know that it hurt. I think they were fine without Brady Singer. They showed their depth. They continued to find pitching. I mean, it's maybe more. I'm leaning towards my front office grade here with what the rotation was. But Lugo not quite as good to start. Then got on track. Then got hurt. Michael Wacha eating innings. But the Chris Bubich part to me was huge. The Noah Cameron part to me is huge. The Ryan Bergert part is huge, and that's where I come in, and Cole Reagans is just absolutely insane right now to finish the year. But basically striking out 18 per 9 since coming back. I mean, I don't know what's not to like. I mean, the negative, if I dinged them, your A- looks pretty good. If I dinged them, it does look like we're going to watch a lot of injuries, right? It's like last year was the complete fluke, and maybe this year I'm overreacting, and it's not going to be as bad as it was this year, but it does look like the tinkering gives weapons to pitchers, but also breaks pitchers down. But it's a price I'm willing to pay to see quality pitching, and it's how you have to do it. I think if you're small market, you have to pitch. You're not going to just slug from market 34.
Yeah, and I mean, if anything, the way Cole Reagans finished the year, you probably do have to give them a bump there because he's healthy. He clearly looks healthy. He clearly looks like not only that he's healthy, but he almost reiterated, even though his final numbers were not great, he reiterated what we saw all of last season and frankly late 2023, which is he is a top 5 starting pitcher in all of baseball when he's healthy. You mentioned, 18 strikeouts per 9 innings since he came back for the season. I believe he ended at 14.8 strikeouts per 9 innings. The Royals tweeted this out after the game. It might have been Ian Kraft, one of their PR guys. Great stat. He had the highest strikeout per 9 inning ratio for any pitcher who had made 10 starts in a season in the history of baseball. 14.8. You see that from relievers sometimes. You don't see it from starters. Now, I prefer to use strikeout percentage because the thing with strikeouts per 9 innings is it actually gives an artificial boost to pitchers who happen to give up a lot of base runners per inning. And that was one of the reasons Cole Reagans' ERA was so high this year. He happened to give up a lot of hits on balls in play. So he had more opportunities maybe for our strikeout than a truly dominant pitcher with a similar strikeout rate. But let's look at strikeout percentage. In all of Major League history, all starters with 10 or more starts, Cole Reagans, his strikeout rate was 38.1%. That's the 8th best in Major League history. He was 10th before today's start. Do you know who he leapfrogged over with today's start, where he had 8 strikeouts and 4 to third?
Like Randy Johnson or Pedro Martinez or
Absolutely nailed it. Randy Johnson at 9th was one ahead of him. His 2001 season. That's the season Randy Johnson struck out 372 batters. Basically, I think if they hadn't been going to the postseason, he could have started on the final day of the season with the chance to break Nolan Ryan's all-time strikeout record in the season. And then the Diamondbacks went on to win the World Series in large part because of Randy Johnson. And then the other guy leapfrog was Pedro Martinez, 1999, which might be the greatest season in baseball history for a pitcher. Like, those two are 2 of the greatest seasons ever. Mind you, the other 7 guys still ahead of him, 7 or 8 guys, all have had their seasons since 2018. Like, strikeout rates have just gone up so much. Everybody above him is pitched in the last 7-8 years, which puts Pedro and Randy Johnson in context. Relative to their era, those may be the 2 most dominant, most overpowering seasons ever. But the point is, Cole Reagans was on that list in a season where he didn't really do much of anything for the Royals. So, and he was better when he came back than he was before he got hurt. So the fact that, yes, even if they're going to suffer through injuries, that these are not career-ending injuries, career-altering injuries, that these are injuries that, the guy's unavailable for a certain amount of time, and then he comes back and he's back to being dominant. That makes you feel even a little bit better about the pitching staff going forward.
Yeah, for sure. And just the variety of starters, the different types of starters, makes you really feel like, they understand pitching at every level, right? At every depth. And I think that's one of the cool things about it. All right, let's move to the bullpen. What are you handing out for the bullpen?
So the bullpen, I am giving a B+ to. And the bullpen had, I believe, I want to say the 6th or 7th best ERA of any bullpen in baseball this year. We'll get into that a little bit more next week when we talk about our preseason predictions, which is a huge step forward from last year. It's they were below league average last year in terms of bullpen ERA, but their starting pitching was so dominant, it didn't matter. The only reason I don't give them an A is because I do think some of that was defense as much as bullpen. Like, the bullpen was not overpowering in terms of strikeout rate. Even the guys who, they're closer and setup men like Lucas Erceg and Carlos Estevez, neither of those guys, struck out a man an inning or anywhere close to it. So they did rely on their defense a little bit more, but it worked, right? I mean, Daniel Lynch, Angel Serpa, John Charter, these are a bunch of no names to some extent after you get past the top 2 relievers. Everyone was quietly effective. Nobody was dominant, so I'm not giving them an A, but I mean, this is, if anything, you can transfer some of the extra credit you might give the bullpen to the coaching staff, to the manager, right? The way that they were used. So that'll be reflected later. But it was a good bullpen.
What was the letter?
A B+.
B+. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I went B, just because I look around at other bullpens, and most bullpens, and certainly most high-end bullpens, have multiple guys that come in and just blow you away. And the Royals don't really have that.
Right.
They have some guys that look like they can get there. I think Cruz is maybe another offering away from being able to be that guy.
Lewin Avila might be there now. We're not sure.
I think if they decide that they're going to put him in the bullpen because they've got enough depth, I think he can be that weapon. That to me is what they're missing. On the nights, I really like the Carlos Estevez signing. I thought that put everybody in place and took a lot of pressure off the other guys. You didn't have to ask Lewin Avila to be your closer. You didn't have to ask Daniel Lynch to finish some games. That helped put it together. So I really like that move. Again, that goes to the front office and how, what grade I'm going to throw at them. But yeah, I thought it was a good, solid bullpen. And, but I think it needs more power. It needs more guys that it's just lights out. And I don't know that. I think there are a couple of those guys in the organization. Jonathan Bolin, I'm optimistic about, but maybe there's some guys down low I need to take a longer look at. We're going to see come up and get a shot, but they need a little more power. They need a little more swing and miss out of that for me to be able to go above a B. But I think it's a good bullpen, and I think it's a good compliment to the rotation. The rotation certainly helped it be better by continuing to go deep into games. But this year was a little bit more They were so consistently 6+ last year out of the rotation. They had to do a little more lifting.
Yep. Yeah, that's absolutely right. And I mean, Kid Dynamite in the comment section does make a good point that, like, Hunter Harvey was kind of supposed to be that guy. If they had Hunter Harvey healthy the whole year, that's the guy who was supposed to be the lights out dominant guy. But again, the fact that they were as successful as they were without a dominant middle innings guy is a testament to the quality of pitching instruction in the organization, but also is a reflection of, like, I think they get some bonus credit for putting together this bullpen without expending a lot of resources at all. Like, they spent $11 million a year on a 2-year deal for their closer, so they put a little bit of effort into that. They put some trade capital into trading for Lucas Erceg last year, although the guys that they gave up in that trade, one of the star of the three, they saw this weekend in Sacramento. Mason Barnett started against them, and Jonathan Indy had a home run off him, and still walking too many guys. So I don't think they'll ever regret the talent they gave up in that trade. But everybody else, I mean, okay, Daniel Lynch was a first-round pick, but he's a failed starter. Like, they moved him there because he didn't work out as a starter. It's a backup plan. They didn't draft him as a closer. Angel Serpa was a completely under the radar international signing. Right, it took years before he showed up. John Schreiber, they traded an 11th round pick named David Sandlin to get John Schreiber, and Sandlin might end up being a reliever with the Red Sox at some point. Might be okay, but like, if that's the case, they traded a bird in the hand for one in the bush, or whatever the hell that expression is. Like, they got the reliever now, and he's been helpful. Taylor Clark, they picked him up off waivers, and he had a really good season. Steven Cruz was half of the trade return from one season of Michael A. Taylor. Jonathan Bolin, 2nd round pick, who was supposed to be a starter, and this was the backup plan. You go on, and Luinder Avila has become a good prospect, but again, was not a high profile international signing at all. That's your bullpen right there, and they fashioned that into a one of the 7-8 best bullpens in all of baseball this year. So yeah, I think that's why I give them the plus.
I want to highlight a couple of things. First of all, Chad checking us out from Sydney. That's awesome. Great to have you from the great down under. And that what is
I'm assuming that's Sydney, Australia. If it's like Sydney, Oklahoma, don't tell us.
Yeah, we want it to be Sydney, Australia. No, and then I got to point out our buddy Cam. He pitching A+, hitting D+, overall C-. Earlier, Cam though said he had predicted him for 77 wins, so successful season. And then he comes in at C-. So I guess
I don't know how you average an A+ and a D+ and get a C-. Like, I do not want to be taking a class with Cam as my teacher, because I would be very bitter about the grade distribution there.
Yeah. C-Dub points out, the land down under. Thank you.
Don't you know your Men at Work, Soren?
I was just gonna say that's the song.
You're old enough, that's for sure.
As soon as get a Vegemite sandwich here at some point. Yeah.
Don't do that. Everything I've heard, please do not get a Vegemite sandwich.
I've heard maybe Chad will tell us. He does.
No, poor Chad. He's like giving us compliments. Here we are, just like crapping on the food down in Australia, even though we've never tried one. So.
I wonder is Chad, if you could tell us in the comments, are you a native Australianer that just became a Royals fan, or are you a transplanted Royals fan down to Australia? I'd be interested in knowing that. Just curious. All right, so let's move on. Let's go to the lineup. Rany, what do you got?
Yeah, I'm not my favorite.
All right,
great. So
go ahead.
I was gonna say, I guess I'm gonna bump this up a half grade, because I'm trying to be nice here. I'm gonna give them a D+ for the lineup. Look, it wasn't good. And it's the reason why they missed the playoffs. Like, there's no way to sugarcoat that. I will say they did not finish last in the American League in runs scored. They finished 13th out of 15 teams. But as I pointed out last week, the entire reason they finished, I think, 3 runs ahead of the White Sox. Did I have that correct? 4 runs. 4 runs ahead of the White Sox and 8 runs ahead of the Guardians is because they scored 10 runs off of a position player last week in 2 innings. Take that out, and they're dead last. And that should not, anybody who lets them off the hook because of that is doing the team a disservice. The reason I'm giving them a plus, they were legitimately better in the second half of the season. But the first half was a disaster. Do you actually know, since the All-Star break, where the Royals rank in the American League in runs scored?
Since the All-Star break, well, at one point they were up there. They were like third in that 35, 37 game stretch. So I'm guessing that regressed down. I'm going to say probably like seventh.
They finished third.
Wow.
In the American League in runs scored. They were tied for third coming into today.
Since the All-Star break.
Since the All-Star break, which is, it's a shorter sample size than the first half, but like it's, I don't know, 70 games or something like that. They were tied for third with the Mariners and A's coming into today, and they outscored both of those teams. The only teams that scored more runs after the All-Star break were the Yankees and the Blue Jays. I'm kind of surprised by that, to be perfectly honest. And that 20 spot they put up on Toronto definitely, I mean, it was literally like 6% of the runs came in one game. So let's not ignore that.
I will say counts. I mean, that it shows you had the ability, and it was against a good team. I mean, don't like everyone's going to talk about the Chiefs game and be like, well, if you take that last run out, I mean, everybody else has to count all 60 minutes in a football game. Everybody else has to count all 162. Don't be.
It's not the 20, it's the 10 against the position player. But I get it. But look, I'll give them credit. They were a much better team in the second half, in part because the reinforcements they brought in. I mean, Mike Yastrzemski hit 2 more home runs today. So some of it was a talent upgrade. Some of it was an improvement of the players they had on hand. Obviously, Carter Jensen gave them the boost that Jack Caglione didn't in September. So there is some reason for optimism, but there were just too many. There were too many disappointments, and the entire outfield was just a radioactive zone from start to finish. And again, they missed the playoffs by 5 games, which is enough that I'm not losing sleep over it. All right. If they had been in the National League, where 83 wins got you in, the Cincinnati Reds and 83 wins are in the playoffs. And by the way, it's funny, we never talk about this, and with good reason, about the Brady Singer trade.
Uh-huh.
Brady Singer, I believe he started today, and mind you, the Reds. I think the Reds lost. I'm not actually sure that was the reason why. But got in through the back door because the Mets went full on Mets today, really all month. But they don't make the playoffs without trading Jonathan India for Brady Singer. It's definitely a win for the Reds, and yet I don't regret that trade at all, because while Brady Singer was above replacement value in the abstract, was he any better than the replacement, quote unquote, replacement value for the Royals? I don't think so. Like, if Brady Singer had been on this team, Noah Cameron might not have gotten the shot. Right. So it's just a sign of how much pitching this team has. They can lose Brady Singer or not miss it, and how little hitting they had, that they brought in Jonathan India. He was a huge disappointment, and he probably still helped the team more than Brady Singer would have had they kept him.
Yeah. And Brady Singer was Brady Singer.
Yeah, he was.
I mean, that's
good and bad. He wasn't bad. He was probably disappointing at times, but he took the ball every 5th day, more or less, and was a league average starter.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking at it. I mean, all his numbers are largely, what they were the year before. The one thing I will point out, where is his? I am stunned by the quantity of home runs he gave up. I will give
for that ballpark. For that ballpark, was impressive. Yeah.
Yeah, I will say that I think their coaching staff did something, with him. I got to give them some success, because I thought he might lead the league in home runs allowed.
Yeah, he finished with a 4.03 ERA in that ballpark, and he made 32 starts and threw 170 innings. Like, he had a good season. Like, that, you'd be very happy to have that in your rotation. It's not your ace, but in your rotation. But again, the Royals didn't miss him. But it's just sad that Jonathan India was a disappointment, and a lot of other guys were too, and that's why they missed the playoffs. So I'm giving them a D+ on offense.
I will tell you that I gave them a C-, and it's more so because I like the top is in place, right? I like what's going on the top. I like the young talent coming up at the end, and I don't think they've got to go out and find stars to make this lineup very good. I think they just need to find some league average hitting outfielders, right? If you can find guys that hit better than that, then this team's a beast, right? Like if they would re-sign Mike Yastrzemski and Jack Caglione would be a 30 home run guy playing right field, and then they can get a league average hitting center fielder, and Kyle Isbell's your fourth outfielder, or you just get a platoon with Kyle Isbell, and that makes his numbers that much better. Yeah, I don't think they're that far away. I think I know the numbers are bad because of how bad it was early, but I think the overall talent is better than that. So for the lineup, which is the batters, the hitters, it's not the guys coaching them, it's the batters, the hitters. I give them a C minus. I'm not that far away. You said you bumped them up just to be nice, though. Why aren't you going to just go D or D minus if that's what you really think?
Well, because, like I said, the second half improvement, I think some of that might be sustainable because some of that was the talent they brought in. Obviously, Carter Jensen, the way Carter hit the ground, Carter did what I was hoping Caglione would do, and it was a small sample size. It was just for 1 month. But when you consider the position Carter plays, it in some ways is even more impressive. So ultimately, I decided, they didn't finish last in the league in runs scored. I'm gonna give them a D. Look, a D plus is not. There's still a notation on the report card. Come see me after class. Like that is in no way, shape, or form an endorsement of the offense. But it wasn't an abject disaster. It was a minor disaster.
It wasn't an abject disaster. I love that. I think that's great. All right. We still have the coaching staff and the front office to grade. We will do that right after you hear from our friends at Northland Injury Law. Northland Injury Law, Kansas City's Google 5-star rated personal injury lawyers, serving KC for more than 40 years, voted Kansas City's #1 accident lawyers, helping people with serious injuries from car accidents, work accidents, falls, and other personal injuries. Northland Injury Law doesn't get paid unless they get money for their client. Don't wait, get compensated now. If you have a case, text HURT to 22222. That's HURT to 22222, or call 816-400-HURT. That's 816-400-4878. The choice of a lawyer is an important one and should not be based solely upon advertisements. Italian Delight was the first restaurant to bring true New York-style pizza to Kansas City almost 50 years ago. They sell whole pies or pizza by the slice, or enjoy their classic strombolis, calzones, and sausage rolls. Sandwich lovers, check out their lineup of hot and cold subs, the combo, the meatball, or the Philly cheesesteak, just to name a few. And don't forget the pasta. Their famous lasagna and classic chicken Alfredo always hit the spot. And if you're hungry for lunch, check out their daily lunch specials, starting at under $10. Italian Delight can even cater your next work function or party. Dine in, carry out, or delivery, it's Italian Delight. Located just 3 minutes east of Kansas Speedway at 8145 State Ave in KCK. Check out the menu and order online at ItalianDelightKS.com. Kansas City's own Italian Delight. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, proudly serving the greater Kansas City area. Nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor. Locally owned and making parking lot problems disappear in Kansas City since 1994. Let Gann educate you about the most cost-effective way to solve your parking lot problems. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews. Every project comes with a written warning. Gann Asphalt keeps your parking lot safer and helps you and your business avoid unnecessary delays and costly expenses. Find Gann online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, one contractor, all things parking lot. All right, Randy, the coaching staff. Here we go.
So you listed this on our rundown as the coaching staff, which, there's more than one coach, and like it's a very very broad way to say. It's like, what do you say about a team and you have pitching coaches and you have hitting coaches, and I have to give one grade for all of them. So I'll give the coaching staff as a whole a B minus, but that breaks down as an A for the pitching coach and the pitching development, and then a D on the hitting side. Like,
so it comes in, what you put it all together and you get
B
what?
B minus.
B minus. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, look, I'm giving a higher grade for the pitching coaches and the pitching itself, because this is the second straight year that Brian Sweeney and company have done this with the pitching staff, with, kind of completely out of the blue. I mean, we started to see it come into play in like August of 2023 on a team that had, was barreling towards 120 losses, and then suddenly Cole Reagan shows up and the pitching stabilized 4 months into the tenure of the new regime. But in retrospect, that seems to be about just a 4-month adjustment period, and they have been elite ever since. But my A grade for the pitching coaches reflects the fact that I have basically as much confidence right now in the Royals developing pitching as I have in anything the Royals have done in my adult life. I mean, like, on a consistent basis. Like, you look back at, the bullpen of, the 2014, 2015 Royals. Even there, it wasn't so much, oh, they're great at developing relievers, as they've got 3 historic guys. But like the 4th guy was Aaron Crow in 2014. So it's like, is this coaching, or is it just they just got 3 incredible dudes? I don't remember us talking about the coaching back then. It was about the players. But this time around, it's so many different guys who they've acquired in so many different ways. And so few of them were high profile guys when they were acquired, that I have no choice but to give credit to the pitching development side. So an A for the pitching development, pitching coaches, a D on the hitting side. Average should be minus.
Yeah, I have no problem with that. I too have them at a B minus. And I'll throw in the base running being a problem. Now, I don't know how much of that is the coach, how much of that is just brain dead, players. I mean, like that's where I'm not gonna spend a whole lot of time lamenting on that part of the equation. But the pitching, all the pitching coaching seemed to be fantastic. Everybody who comes, the guys come from the minor leagues, they perform. Guys come from other teams, they get better. I just don't have anything negative to say about the coaching that's going on when it comes to the pitching. Base running's a problem. Hitting, I think we do have to acknowledge overall bad, and I think there should be long discussions happening or should have probably taken place in the last week. In fact, as we sit here right now, no news. I don't think any changes are coming to you.
I don't know. I mean, 2 years ago, the Royals, finished off a 106 loss season in Cleveland, I believe. And, the game ended around 5 p.m. Local time, or I should say local Kansas City time. They probably landed the plane around 7:30 in Kansas City. And I think by this time, by the time we aired our podcast, the news had come out that the Royals had relieved Mike Matheny and Cal Eldred of their duties. I have not heard anything yet, but they're flying back from Sacramento. So it's possible that we will hear something, if not later tonight, then tomorrow or Tuesday. The Royals will have, I'm sure, an end of season press conference, and we'll have a lot more clarity on that. I maintain a belief that it will acknowledge they have to do something different on the hitting side. It may not be the wholesale cashiering of people in the organization the way that had to be done with Matheny and Eldred. I've maintained they don't have to fire Alex Zumwalt and kick him out of the organization. I'm sure there are roles that they can put him in, but they need to add new voices. That may take some time. We may not see that. Adding people, hitting coaches, et cetera. You're not doing that the day after the season is over. You're going to be doing that in the weeks to come. And if you want to hire from a playoff team, it may be longer than that. But I do think they will do some of that. It'll probably be less than you and I want.
I think there might be some shuffling of the deck or some additions may be made. I don't think anyone's going to be out. Maybe there'll be like Alex Zumwalt is going to handle the minor league stuff, and there'll be a new hitting coach coming in. I don't think anybody's really going to get fired, and I'll stick up for him a little bit. I've got the B minus, and I had B, and I backed off to B minus with the base running and that kind of thing. But I want to stick up for this. I know, no one sees Mike Yastrzemski or Adam Frazier as, long-term pillars for this team. Although I think a lot of people would probably like to see Mike Yastrzemski re-signed on a 1 or 2 year deal with the Royals. But you can't ignore that both of them were better once they got to Kansas City. I mean, we can't hype up Brian Sweeney and how he, made Burgert better and does all those things and not look at those guys. I know they're not like, I want Jack Caglione to hit. At some point, Jack Caglione has to have somebody in his ear that makes him a fearsome hitter. That has to happen. Carter Jensen cannot be screwed up. He cannot become MJ Melendez, right? I understand that there are bigger fish to fry, but some of the shrimp, not too bad, right? Like I think there were some successes, and that one stretch, Alex Zumwalt and his staff were the guys through that 35 game stretch that had this team back in and believing that they were a playoff caliber team. And so I don't think you can deny that. It wasn't all bad. I know based upon what JJ Picola said on my radio show that he said, like, we always believed in the hitting. I said, look, got to feel good. It was right as they were having that hot streak. It's kind of the end of the hot streak. In fact, maybe I'd cursed it by bringing him on and saying that. He said, we've always believed in our hitting people. And so,
look, you're absolutely right. Like, we cannot ignore the fact that they were better. I mean, like I just said, they were third in the American League in runs scored after the break. And
I'm not that, by the way, that statement wasn't at you.
No, I know. I agree.
People in general that are already of the peak, because we've had some comments here. Fire Zumwalt. Zumwalt's got to go.
I mean, look, in 2-3 months, like mid-season, we might as well have been in the comment section, right? Like we were saying that. And I still feel like the Royals would be a better team, better organization next year if someone other than Alex Zumwalt is the hitting coach. Alex Zumwalt still can have a role in the organization, but I do think they would be better if they brought someone in. And I will acknowledge, though, Mike Yastrzemski was really good. Like you said, Adam Frazier was really good. But to me, the fulcrum of this argument is the Jack Caglione argument, because I think we said this a month ago when he came off the injured list and said, look, if he comes back and hits and shows like he's made adjustments, that might be what it takes to save Alex Zumwalt's job. And Alex Zumwalt might deserve that, right? He might deserve to get another chance if he can show, because look, it's great that Adam Frazier had, a hot streak for 2 months, but was that the hitting coach or was that a hot streak? Whereas Jack Caglione crushed the ball in the minor leagues, came up, fell flat on his face, went back to the minor leagues, crushed again, and came back up. Well, since coming back up, he performed so poorly that he was not in the lineup the last 2 games of the season, with nothing to play for except, their pride and, the hope of a winning season. They did not start him. They started him, mind you, in his last start, he batted 9th, which I thought was interesting because it's quite possibly the first time in his entire life that Jack Caglione has batted 9th at any level. But since coming back, he hit 183 with, granted, a 310 on base percentage. He did have the walk rate there, but a 334 slugging. That's not progress. That's more of the same. When he first came up, he was hitting the ball hard. His exit velos were great. Like, it was just like bad luck. Even that seemed to disappear as the season went along. He didn't look like the same guy. And that's the guy the hitting coach has to focus on. That's the guy you got to fix. And if you can't fix him, then we need to find somebody who can fix him, because Jack Caglione is as important. The development of Jack Caglione is as important to this organization's success in 2026 and 2027 as any player in the organization, period.
Yeah. I mean, yes, if he is the hitter that you want him to be, that you think he can be, if he is that, then it all gets a lot easier, right? Like, I mean, it all gets much, much easier.
And you can say, oh, yes, it was his first full pro season, and that's true. But like, look at that 2024 draft for one thing. Like, that's already shaping up to be like a really, really good draft. Two picks before him, Nick Kurtz, who hit his 36th home run today for the A's, despite getting called up in like May. Not just, rookie of the year by acclamation, one of the all-time great rookie seasons. He had an OPS over 1,000 as a rookie, right? And we've already seen, JJ Weatherholt was taken 1 pick after Jack Caglione. He's one of the 5 best prospects in the minor leagues, right? And multiple guys. Cam Smith, who was the 14th pick by the Cubs, that was traded to the Astros, spent most of the season in the major leagues and had a good year. Chase Burns, the 2nd pick, is going to be a key part of the Reds' playoff hopes now. The Trey Yesavage joined the Blue Jays rotation. He was the 20th pick in the draft. Like, there have already been lots of guys who were drafted 15 months ago, who are succeeding in the major leagues.
Yeah. And
we thought Caglione was going to be, the crown jewel of that. And he suddenly has a lot to prove now. Because there were guys taken after him that are already showing, some signs of success. I'm still very confident that he can do it. I'm still very happy with the draft pick. I'm not putting this on Jack Caglione right now. I'm not putting this on his talent, certainly. I think that the Royals need to find a way to get that talent to emerge at the major league level. And if the guys they have on hand can't do that, they need to find somebody immediately who can.
Okay. Front office.
Front office. So I'm giving the front office a B plus. And I took this question as kind of like the front office job, not just, during the season, but also like, starting at the end of last season. We're talking about like, free agent signings, et cetera, the entire gestalt of things. Look, on the pitching side, we talked about it. They did an amazing job tap dancing through a lot of injuries, with maybe less payroll buffer than a lot of organizations have. I mean, you look at how the Mets just freaking collapsed, running out of pitching with a $340 million payroll. And here are the Royals with a payroll a third of that and lost pitchers left and right like it was nothing. The only reason I don't put them in the A range is the outfield was terrible, probably the worst in baseball. And it would be one thing if that happened because they lost 2/3 of their starting outfield to injuries in April and, never got those guys back. But the outfield was exactly what the outfield they projected to be when they went into the season. They didn't suffer injuries. The guys that they mysteriously thought would be the solution in last winter were the guys they started the season with. And yes, we've talked about, okay, were there better options in free agency? No, probably not. But there, you can always make trades. But the inability to find a solution in the outfield that could have just been mediocre. Like all they needed was mediocrity, and they weren't able to find that. And that ultimately cost them. It forced them to rush Jack Caglione to the major leagues. We thought he was ready, probably wasn't, but he wouldn't have been there if they didn't desperately need him. So that's the one area I have to dock. I have to dock JJ Picollo for. But everything else, I feel as confident that JJ Picollo can be the GM that leads the Royals to the promised land today as I did before the season started. I think he had a good year, but I can't give him an A because the one spot that you and I were most worried about turned out to be exactly as big a problem, and more damaging to their playoff hopes than even we expected. It was a predictable failure, and so for that reason, I have to dock him.
I can't help you there. I'll go A, and I was teetering on A plus. I go A because they didn't sign Anthony Santander, and that was a great move. They didn't sign any of the guys that all sucked, and yes, it would have been they needed somebody. I backed off the A plus because I don't know what else was out there, right? I can't give you, well, this guy moved and this is the one that would have worked. But I do think that something was probably out there. There was probably something where they could be better. So I do ding them. The only thing that they didn't get for the A plus was that they couldn't find at least one outfielder. But I mean, the future of this team, the reality is we're still very early in this tenure. It's not all their system, right? We're early in the Brian Bridges. It's not really going to be a full organization of the JJ Picollo handprints for years. I mean, that's just the reality of it. And I think to feel like that they should just have 3 outfielders ready to go and that they're available, they weren't. I think it's not giving enough credit to the fact that they did not make a bad signing. They don't have a bunch of money. And I think that's going to be, I think they know it. I think it's more important to not have a bad contract than it is to go find a great one.
Well, look, we can agree to disagree here. What I would say in
and then all the moves, the Bergert and the Kolek and and Yastrzemski, they seemingly pressed every button they could press. Carter Jensen has come up and hit the ground running. I mean, I guess I could ding him for Jack Caglione really wasn't ready, but they pushed him on up. I don't know if it would have been better to just stay with Rave or do what they do. So you can guess a little bit on that one. But I think you're harsh.
No, I mean, like I said, we can agree to disagree. My argument for you is if you had told me before the season that at the end of the year, we will give the front office an A, you and I both would have said, well, then they're definitely going to the playoffs. We had them going to the playoffs. That was our prediction. The record is the record. And they went 82-80. And I thought, and you thought that they would be better than this and that they would have a playoff team. for that reason alone, I have to ding him a little bit.
No,
The other thing I'll say is, what was the
no,
one
no,
move?
no. Hold on. Because we thought they were going to be a playoff team, and then if they don't get there, and you don't take a look at what happened within the season, and you just say, well, it can't be an A because we picked them for the playoffs and they didn't get there.
Well,
The
I'm looking at
amount
what
of
happened. What happened was the outfield that we were terrified of sucked.
but along the way, the pitchers fell like flies, and they stayed in the race, because the front office went out and got more pitching.
And that's why I'm giving them a B+. I mean, look, if you want to say if I want to give a trade deadline grade to JJ Piccolo, I might give him an A+ for like the second time in 3 years. Like at the JJ right now is like king of the trade deadline until proven otherwise. But looking at the whole thing, I'm giving him a B+.
But you can't come up with an outfielder that they should have signed, right?
Well, okay, two things. One, there are such things as trades that they could have made.
Agreed. But there is no one that was traded that we know was traded. So this guy was available, and there definitely wasn't a free agent.
There was one. And it's the guy we talked about on this show a lot last offseason. It's the guy they absolutely should hire for the organization. And we've talked about a lot. I'm dinging them for not signing Kevin Seitzer. Like,
okay,
we're talking about the front office. I'm just saying, like, that's
no argument.
And again,
no argument.
JJ had a good year. I'm happy with like this.
That's
B+ is a C is average here. C+ maybe is average. I'm a harsh grader, but that to me, I'm just like, we'll never know. But man, I just wonder if they'd made this one move, could they have taken the existing talent they had on hand and maybe they figure out something and maybe they score a few more runs and that's all it takes. I don't know.
Yeah.
So I see your point. Like, look, JJ, I'm duly impressed with what he has done basically for the last 27 months since the moment he picked up the phone with Texas and said, this is what we want for Aroldis Chapman. From that moment till now, I mean, you can make a case he's had as good a run as any general manager in all of baseball. No question. And I think he had a good year. He didn't have as good a year as he did maybe last year, but he had a good year. And if they solve that one hitting, I mean, I said this before. I'm waiting for news about what they're going to do on the hitting side because I'm very prepared to get on a truly ridiculous bandwagon for next season because I think that JJ has put together all of the building blocks in terms of talent for this team to be the best team in the American League Central next year, but they need the coaching to bring that out. And that remains to be seen whether they'll do that or not.
Yeah. The Kevin Seitzer thing is strong. That's a strong argument. Because there was a guy there that was available who's did it again and they didn't go get him for whatever reason. I mean,
it'd be one thing if like the Mariners fell flat on their face, but you know who fell flat on their face? The Atlanta Braves.
Yes.
And the Seattle Mariners are the number, they have a bye in the first round. They won the division for the first time in 24 seasons. It's not all the hitting, but mostly the hitting.
I'm not going to say Cal Raleigh is all Kevin Seitzer, but he did go from being a 30 home run hitter to a 60 home run hitter with Kevin Seitzer there. And even if Kevin Seitzer had literally nothing to do with Cal Raleigh, he got out of the way.
Yeah.
And I've had conversations with Kevin Seitzer. That's one of the things that I appreciate about him the most as a hitting coach is he understands don't fix what ain't broke. He doesn't feel a need to get his fingerprints on something so he can be a hero. If you're chugging along and you don't need anything from him, he is fine. He has confidence in his ability as a hitting coach and doesn't need a medal from every player that he's around, so.
And I just want to point this out one more time. The Mariners play in one of the 2 or 3 best pitching parks in all of baseball. So when you look at the numbers of that team and you're like, no, they're good. They're not. No. They're amazing. I mean, they're you look at someone like, Julio Rodriguez, who started really slow, finished with, 32 home runs and a 474 slug in that ballpark. His, OPS plus is right there with Bobby Witt. Like relative to the ballpark, he was just a smidge behind Bobby Witt because that is such a tough place to hit. So it makes the Mariners offense that much better and that much more a reason for their success. They going into the season, everyone's talking about their pitching staff. Their pitching staff is good, but it looks better because of that ballpark. Yeah. So that's just, to me, that's an easy half grade right there. just like bring, and I will always wonder if they made that one little move for somebody who would have cost a fraction of what a player costs, even though, even the most marginal free agent, hitter, that one move might be the difference between us talking like we are now and us previewing a playoff series.
Yeah. That's big. That was big. I also like, where the draft is going. They had a good draft, and neither one of us have mentioned that yet, but their draft.
I mean, we don't know yet for sure for this year, but like,
No, but it
like
was
the idea.
Yeah, but it was universally liked, right?
Yeah.
Like, but what they did, most people are on board with.
Well, and then last year's draft, which is essential, we're able to evaluate the scouting director he brought in. We have one draft that we can really like evaluate with actual like performance, and for all we've talked about Jack Caglione, like he could have just stayed in the minors all year and would be a top 10 prospect, a top 20 prospect in baseball. And David Shields, their second round pick, was absolutely phenomenal. So, and there are other interesting talents throughout that draft beyond that. So yeah, no, that's absolutely a good point. Like I feel like the farm system is in good hands. Like 3 years ago, every aspect of the organization was just like in disarray. The pitching side has gone from maybe the worst and certainly the most behind the curve in all of baseball to a leading light. I would say early signs are that in terms of scouting amateur talent, they've gone from below average to above average. They just got to address the hitting side and the foundation in terms of player development, which is such a key for a small market team, will be in as strong a position as it's been in my memory.
Yeah. I think it's a great point. You can help support the Kaufman Corner podcast by supporting our great sponsors like Gann Asphalt and Concrete, Kansas City's best nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor. They've been solving parking lot problems since 1994. One contractor, all things parking lot. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com. Our friends at Northland Injury Law. If you have a case, text HURT to 22222. That's HURT to 22222, or call 816-400 HURT, voted Kansas City's #1 accident lawyers, serving KC for more than 40 years. And our friends at Italian Delight, the first restaurant to bring true New York-style pizza to Kansas City almost 50 years ago. Strombolis, calzones, hot and cold subs, lasagna, daily lunch special starting at under $10. 3 minutes east of Kansas Speedway, on State Avenue in KCK. Whether it's dine-in or delivery, you can order online, ItalianDelightKS.com. And our buddy Renee, who you will see in the chat room as well, remind you that they will be open for Monday Night Football. Chiefs will be on Monday Night Football. They'll be open for Monday Night Football. So if you need some pies or some great Italian food, it is Italian Delight, one of our great sponsors here at the Kaufman Corner. For the good doctor, Rany Jazayerli, I'm Soren Petro saying thank you very much for joining us here on Kaufman Corner.